Auzu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. I'm your host, FAIZA with a prayer. May Allah keep you all safe, healthy, and blessed. And may Allah hasten the appearance of Imam of our time and fill this world with peace and justice, inshallah. Ameen. Today's topic we are about to discuss is related to Gaza genocide, which is ongoing, and starvation war, which is really in a chaotic situation. People who are going to take aid from some station from where they can get the small packages of aid with some flour, sugar, or basic stuff, which is not even good for more than 7 days. They are being targeted by Israeli forces and through the bullets and all that. So, how this situation is in the Palestine, how the people of Gaza are dealing with all this chaos of this humanitarian chaos, which is related to which is going towards famine as well. So we will discuss that in deeper sense, and we will also look into the situation with the Trump administration, what's going on with them, and between Iran, what is the situation over there from their talk perspective. And we will also try to look into the recent statement given by Sayyid Ali Khamenei regarding Trump statements that his words are not of an importance that we could even give them importance. Then the Trump is also the liar, because he said that he is trying to gain power for peace, and whereas there is no peace since he is in administration. So we will try to look into the situation in more deeper detail. We do have a very prestigious guest with us, Sayyid Shabir Razavi. He is political analyst and commentator. We do have Farahu. He is also an author, commentator, and director of Palestinian Aid. And I'm really grateful for your time, both of you. Really honored to have you on the show. Thank you so much. And Farah, I would like to congratulate you as well for the charity you are working on. And I guess your charity has donated like 115K for Gaza aid this year. So really heartiest congratulations on this such a great effort you are doing. Thank you so much for that as well, in the sense that it is something you are doing from all of us in a way. So first of all, Farah, if you would like to share some current update regarding Gaza starvation war, and could share some most important facts from there, so that we can understand what is current status of the Gaza genocide.
Thank you very much, Faiza, and hello everyone. It's a pleasure to be on the programme this evening. Yeah, I'm a director of Palestine Aid. It's a registered charity here in Belfast, and we've been able to source 250,000 meals on the ground in Gaza at a total cost of £115,000, kindly donated by the people both in the north of Ireland, which is still under occupation and is still a part of the United Kingdom, and to include people from the Republic of Ireland. So we have a team on the ground in Gaza, and up to 4 weeks ago, we were still able to supply them with our financial donations to help source food parcels for 1 week for a family of approximately 6 people. What we know on the ground, we've all seen the photographs of the children starving in the hospitals, in the homes, the photographs of the dead babies and the newborn, and the mothers who are malnourished, who cannot breastfeed the children because they can't produce breast milk. And this means that the children are unnecessarily dying, can't get baby powder, can't get baby formula, can't get anything. I mean, we've only got to witness the chaotic scenes at this Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. Now, the background of that, it appears to be an American-Israeli construct. It appears to be inaugurated alongside Mossad and the CIA. There are mercenaries employed at $1,000 a day. And some of these mercenaries, along with the Israeli snipers, are murdering people at will. We are queuing up like cattle in the heat of the sun. People who are already malnourished, people who are already desperate, People who already feel helpless, losing their dignity, queuing up like animals, getting a food supply, which some of them, 20 kilograms, cannot carry. Some of the people who have travelled all the way from the north to get these essential life saving supplies are then murdered on their return to the north. So they're saying the UN, there are 14,000 children in immediate in, facing not just starvation, facing death within the next 4 to 6 weeks, or potentially even less. Now, the only people who should supply humanitarian aid in Gaza is UNRWA, is the United Nations. The Israelis and the Americans are using these food stations, which are based apparently inside military camps. They are using starvation as a weapon of subjugation. They're using the food aid as a coercive plan in order to, they say they're feeding people, but there are, what, 2 million people in Gaza, 1.5 million now pushed into the Malwazi refugee camp outside of Khan Yunis, while the IDF is systematically destroying every home, every structure within Khan Yunis as we speak. So they're using the starvation as a weapon of ethnic cleansing, genocide, subjugation. And this I can only describe it as a cynical scam. This idea that they are somehow helping to alleviate the starvation, when all they have to do is open the Rafah border crossing, let the thousands of trucks that are there that have enough food for everyone in Gaza for a fortnight, let that in, and those trucks will then be, there will be more follow-up trucks, more convoys. There's something like 7,000 people, if that's correct, travelling from Tunisia as we speak, people from Morocco, people from Algeria, people from Tunisia travelling to try and break the siege at the Rafah border crossing. Then there is the Great March to Gaza next week, where thousands of internationals are expected to descend upon the Egyptian border crossing if they get permission from the Egyptian government. So we're witnessing a continuation of the genocide. We're also witnessing, I heard today, I'm not going to take too long, I just heard today on Al Jazeera that some of the injuries of the people now queuing for the food are potentially being inflicted upon them by other Palestinians. People are that desperate that they are fighting physically and potentially with more, not just their hands, if I can put it that way. People are fighting over the food because people are so desperate. And then Netanyahu has publicly confirmed that they have armed and financed a group of ISIS-type terrorists inside Gaza in order to try and break up whatever civil infrastructure, whatever civil organisation people have left within Gaza to try and maintain some form of hope, some form of civil society, so that they don't fall into chaos, they don't fall into helplessness. And finally, that's what this food program is designed to do. It's designed to have people become dependent on the Israelis and the Americans for their very survival, while Israeli companies make profit from supplying food to Gaza at the expense of the UN and other taxpayers.
Thank you for sharing current updated situation within the Gaza, and how people are starving and being targeted while taking taking food from certain places. So, Shabir bhai, what are your thoughts? Especially recently, we have seen Greta Thunberg. It was arrived in in Israel, and then those 12 activists were arrived over there, and then she came back in Paris, but some of them are still over there. So how do you see their kind of activism? Because it has multiple layers. In one way, if we look at it, is really wonderful thing they have done. Out of nowhere, they have risked their life, and they have been traveling, and everyone was watching and all that. So how much hope do you think it has given to the people of Gaza, even though the amount of food they were carrying was really very small, but the kind of positivity maybe, or the way media has taken it, was really a huge amount of attention, you can say. So how do you see this aspect, so that I can touch upon the other aspect? First of all, your analysis on that.
Assalamu alaikum. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you very much, sister, for your kind invitation. Usually when I start these programs, my condolences to the martyrs' families, and also our supplications for those who have survived the brutal, barbaric assault on humanity, not just on people in Gaza, but on humanity itself. That I think we have to really remember. That, and Fran has taken all my thunder. He's spoken on all the issues that I was thinking of. But one thing that I would really point out is not only the cynicism of this so-called food charity or foundation, which has been set up by America and Israel, is not only killing people. I understand the latest figure is over 200 people have been shot while they were queuing for food. That's a colossal number just in week 10 days. And secondly, the gangs or the clans that have been operating in Gaza, not just in the last few days, but really from the beginning, whenever there was distribution, the Zionist entity and its PR spokesman come on saying that it's really Hamas who is stealing the food, but it was the clans and these gangs who were supported and funded by the Zionist entity. And now they have come out clearly, Netanyahu himself admitting that we are actually arming these ISIS elements in Gaza. And they've been trying to recruit these hungry individuals to really kill their own people. So you're seeing a vicious circle of inhuman approach to everything that one can imagine that human beings should not be doing. But of course, one can expect that from the Zionist entity. They've been doing that for the last 80 odd years, since they stepped their foot on the holy place of Quds and Jerusalem and the whole of the Palestine. So you can expect this from the Zionist entity. What we have to also really evaluate is that how are our governments, whether it's the British government, European Union. I mean, you talked about Greta Thunberg. I have my own reservations. Someone who is a climate activist, that's a different topic for us to cover. But in reality, is she doing this for selfies to be taken on a yacht and so on? That's a cynical view. But yes, of course, it has put the whole issue on agenda. But of course, people have been demonstrating for the last 20 months and making efforts, and also historically in the last 2 decades since the blockade has been operating in Gaza. There have been many attempts by flotillas, and the last one you may recall about 10 years ago, when 10 people were martyred on a yacht that was a boat that was going to take food to Gaza. So it's a continuous struggle that people have been trying to mount. What is, I suppose, an angle to look at is that no matter who is doing what, at least it's keeping the burning issue of Gaza and its genocide on the forefront of the mind of the people. And I think an interesting speech today, which has been going around on social media, is the Manchester City's manager, who said, I'm paraphrasing what he said. It's a nice sort of comment for about 2 or 3 minutes to listen to. And he said that, those children being killed may seem far away, but it could be turn of our children in the not too distant future if we are not very careful as to where this whole genocide is taking humanity. Because we are not just, people might get numb watching this on a daily basis, on an hourly basis. But what is happening is that we are not getting numb. We are actually getting angry. We are getting frustrated with our governments. We are getting annoyed with the leadership, which just speaks nice words, but in effect takes no action. The other thing to remember is that this boat was a British flag. It's a British flag, and our government has not taken any action. Just imagine this happened 10 years ago when the white helmets, the so-called sort of people who are operating in Syria against Assad. If a flotilla or a boat was going and it was sort of hijacked by the Syrian government in international waters, you can imagine the hoo-ha that would have taken place. But nothing really. Very quietly, it has been sort of, news headlines and so on. Another thing that I think we have to also remember is that what the Zionist entity is doing in Gaza and has been doing in Palestine for the last 80 years, as our dear friend from Northern Ireland was saying or pointed out, that he's living under occupation at this moment. So the British government has really no qualms to occupy and kill people. In my last program with you, I talked about Ireland, how millions of Irish people were killed due to a famine, which was created by the British in the Republic of Ireland at that time. And what was interesting, that only on BBC just a few days ago, Liz Doucette, the agent who works for the BBC, reported that what's happening in Gaza is what British have done in Malaysia and Kenya in the past. They starved people into submission. So really, our government really has no, as I said, no anxiety, no worry if people die of hunger and famine, and they will continue to support the Zionist entity without taking any serious, meaningful and robust action. Because the only way the Zionist entity will restrain itself if our governments, the European Union, the British government, the US, Australia, New Zealand and Canada, these so-called former colonial nations, take serious action. Without any serious action, the Zionist entity will carry on until cows come home, to use a metaphor, because they really couldn't care less at all about the noise being made by politicians and other individuals who may have the cause of humanity close to their heart.
True. Shabir Bhai has raised really very, very important and significant points. Farah, what would you like to share about that, if you would like to add something related to that? And one more point that comes from what Shabir Bhai has mentioned to some extent is that if, for example, I think so in past some time, I'm not sure when, Iran has arrested some American Navy official or something like that, or if we look at, for example, Mahsa Amini case, where the whole world was shouting and this and that and all that, these kind of voices we were listening around the globe regarding a woman, and whereas video was saying everything, but lie was ongoing. In the same way, if the same thing, the way if Iran would have taken some kind of yacht or boat, whatever you say it, so how the world would have reacted. So when Israel has done this, so how the reaction is. So how do you see the kind of change, as Shabir Bhai also mentioned, like people are tired of using words, they want some practical action. So How do you see the role of British government? As some aspects Shabir bhai has also mentioned, but still there are supports going on in terms of selling some parts of whatever weapon they use in genocide or whatsoever, and many other things. So how do you see that complicity? If we when it will come to war crimes, obviously they will add these crimes towards these people, these governments as well. I mean, so how do you see these things, and what would you like to share on that point?
Okay, thank you very much. Well, as we mentioned, the Irish famine, I could maybe start there. We had a famine imposed on the people of Ireland, the island in totality, between 1847 and 1852. Over 1 million people died and 1 million people emigrated. Now, this is a perfect example of colonialism, of capitalism, and of imperialism, all entwined together. So the British had conquered Ireland, they had stolen the land, so they still had an indigenous population who were used as tenant farmers to grow the root vegetable crops for sale both in Ireland and in Britain and further afield. So, as far as I'm aware, the population of Ireland today still has not achieved the level that it was before the famine. So not only did 2 million die or emigrate, we now have 54 million people in the United States of America who claim to be of Irish descent. Then after the famine, you had generation after generation after generation all go into voluntary exile, which is what they're kind of talking about in Gaza. People left because there wasn't work. People left because there wasn't a standard of living. People left because of the dire conditions that they lived in under the burden of colonialism. Like two quick facts about the famine, or three really. One of them is that they say that the famine was due to the potato blight, which was like a fungus that destroyed the potatoes in the ground due to the inclement weather, which is correct. But they took out tens of thousands of tons of mutton, of wheat, of butter, of other uh, sources of capitalist profit. So not only did they let people die, they took out whatever food substances were available to be sold for profit in Britain and in Europe. Now, the Sultan of Turkey sent 3 ships from the Ottoman Empire to relieve the famine in Ireland. Queen Anne, I believe, refused to allow those ships to dock in Ireland. So even at the height of a famine, just like we're watching in Gaza, the same man-made, politically induced famine as a weapon of war and starvation used in the Irish people 150 years ago is being used today in
Mm.
Gaza. It's the same colonial handbook. The Choctaw Indians raise something like 50 or $500 in America to go for famine relief in Ireland. Can you believe in 1850 that a small nation of Native American Indians who had already suffered from colonialism, who had already suffered rape and mass murder and deportation and concentration into the reservations, would raise money to help starving people in Ireland? So you have those three facts, which all go together today when the people in the Knesset say not so much as a grain of wheat will enter Gaza, and then they prevented the Medine from the Madeleine from arriving. They bombed the conscience. They have thousands of trucks at the border at Rafah and in Eretz and the other Israeli border crossings, because I believe there are 6 in total. They won't let any of that in while they use this. This is the finest example of colonial exploitation and ethnic cleansing that you can possibly find. I've said this before. We are witnessing a 17th century colonial mindset, which is the expansionist, supremacist Jewish nation of Israel, using 21st century armaments in order to destroy the people and the infrastructure in Gaza. But they're also using the siege from the Middle Ages. They're also using the starvation of the 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th, and 19th century. You don't have to go too far when you hear, I believe there was like 4 million people died in Iran, many millions died in Africa, many more died in Southern America, Northern America, Canada, Australia, New Zealand. We are talking about the Western, white, Anglo-Saxon, supremacist, imperialist, capitalist colonial states, which have already been referred to. That's most of Western Europe. That's all of the Western-inspired and enriched economies, which have been grown on the poverty of the global south because they were colonized. Their gold, their tin, now their cobalt and the uranium are all being extracted at minimum price for exorbitant resale on the international market. When it comes to Iran and their nuclear program, so Iran's not allowed to have a nuclear program, yet every Western country that has nuclear arms claims they are a deterrent. They will be used only as a last resort if their countries face existential threat to their very existence. So it's okay for the West to have them. It's okay for Israel to have them and not declare them. The IAEA is not going into Israel, but spends 80% of its time going into Iran. They are trying to create the same narrative that they did with the weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. I mean, we know the story of David Kelly. He says that Alistair Campbell told him to add into his dossier that Britain could be attacked with chemical warfare missiles within 45 minutes of a launch from Baghdad. David Kelly then went before the Select Foreign Affairs Committee, and he supposedly committed suicide 2 days later after speaking in front of that panel. And if you watch the documentary by George Galloway, Killing of Kelly, I'm not sure that you would agree that this man committed suicide. Iran is just the latest example of Western imperialist machinations in the internal politics of a sovereign nation which does not bow to their imperialist, globalist, and capitalist demands to allow the resources of Iran to become the riches of the corporations of the West. So all these attacks upon Iran are very simple. The West wants to do what it's always done, which is exact the resources of another sovereign nation which belong to the people of that sovereign nation for the aggrandizement and for the profit of European countries, European shareholders, and European millionaires and billionaires.
Thank you, Bro, for sharing your viewpoint on Iran and other aspects of famine and genocide. Shabir Bhai, what are your thoughts on the current? I think so it's last week when US used their fifth, I think so, veto power regarding ceasefire in Gaza, and they vetoed it. And I mean, on the one hand, as Sayyid Ali Khamenei, Reverend Muslim, has said that he is using power for their own, obviously, greed and whatsoever, and they are lying that they are using power for peace or whatsoever, as Trump stated that they have this power or they want this power for peace or whatsoever, whereas when it comes to peace in Gaza they use their veto power. So how do you see this aspect? And along with that, as Farah also mentioned something related to sovereignty of, for example, Iran, when Sayyid Ali Khamenei also mentioned that we are a sovereign country and we will use our sovereignty, and when America, for example, can do whatsoever things they want to do, so why can't we? So how do you see the statement recently Sayyid Ali Khamenei has made in his speeches, especially I think so it was related to when it was on the anniversary of Imam Khomeini Rahmatullah Alayh. So if you would like to share something on that as well, it would be wonderful.
Yes, thank you. I just want to not correct, but just point out that it wasn't Queen Anne, it was Victoria who was the queen at that time. I think if I remember correctly from my O-levels on that time. Anyway, the issue of Iran is fascinating in so many ways that the advent of the Islamic Revolution in 1979, when Imam Khomeini, whose anniversary you just mentioned took place, death anniversary took place only a few days ago, was an individual who was immersed in religion, in piety. People think of him as a political leader, but first and foremost, he was a religious leader. He, in the Shia school of thought, he was an ayatollah, a marja taqlid, as someone who was to be emulated in many ways, and his rulings were to be followed by significant proportion of the Shia community globally. If he were, a Tibet's leader like Dalai Lama, who would be having coffee and tea in Washington and Paris, he would have been respected very much like Dalai Lama, while Dalai Lama doesn't take any political action to oppose the Western hegemony. However, Imam Khomeini's key principle was that Muslims, oppressed people, and this is also fascinating to remember, that the message of Imam Khomeini wasn't specifically for Muslims or Shias. It was for the oppressed of the world. And that's why people in far corners of South America, in Far East, the jungles of Borneo had heard of Imam Khomeini, because he resonated, he articulated, he expressed the wishes of the oppressed people to be liberated, to be sovereign of their own entity, and to have control over their own natural resources, intellectual resources, cultural resources, historical resources, everything in reality. Because the West not only extracts the resources of a nation, but it also destroys the culture. That's why what I love about the Irish is that they still have their folk songs, they still have their culture, which Britain had tried to destroy over many centuries, but they still have kept to culture, because culture is very, very important to a sovereignty of a nation. So Imam Khomeini articulated the message of the oppressed people, and this is why the West is opposed to the Islamic Republic of Iran. And not only that, from day one, and in fact, I was only reading a few days ago, because I had to do a talk on Imam Khomeini's death anniversary, that he actually talked about Palestine 20 years before the Islamic Revolution, after the 1967 war, which is, 60 years ago now. He talked about Palestine and the Zionist entity as a cancer in West Asia. So he had that on his agenda. And if you look at it, the reason why the Islamic Republic of Iran is being opposed so vehemently since its inception, is first supporting the oppressed, second the cause of Palestine. If tomorrow Iran says that we are going to have good relations, like this fool sitting in Damascus now wants to have good relations with Tel Aviv. If Iran decides to do that, then there is no issue. There's no issue of Masa Amini. There's no issue of human rights in Iran. There's no issue that Iran is not a democracy or what have you, or anything. Because the key agenda of the Islamic Republic of Iran is to support the oppressed people and to support the people of Palestine to have their own state, not a two-state solution, because two-state solution means accepting the Zionist entities usurping of piece of land in West Asia, because that's what two-state solutions mean. That, okay, there will be Israel, there will be Palestine, therefore whatever you've done criminally, you're being awarded for that. So that is not an acceptable solution. So the solution is really to have a democratic state where everyone will have one person, one vote, and they decide who the ruling government would be. The other issue you have to remember is that Imam Khomeini, when he first came into power, there used to be wonderful relationship between Tel Aviv and Tehran. The embassies were there. Raza Shah Pahlavi was, very friendly with the state of Zionist entity. And what Imam Khomeini did on first day one of arriving in Tehran, or within a few days, is gave the Israeli embassy to Palestine. Yasser Arafat visited Tehran at that time, and the embassy was given to the Palestinian Authority. The other thing that Islamic Revolution did was cut off relationship with South Africa, which was an apartheid regime. So you've got to look at it in sort of global context. It's not just Muslims issue. It's not a Shia issue. It's sort of whoever is oppressed, Iran will support them. That's why Mandela, when he visited Tehran, he said, "You are my leader." This is Mandela's own words after visiting Ayatollah Khamenei. So the picture is that so long as the survival of the Islamic Republic of Iran is on the world map, it's the thorn in the butt of the West. And that's what pains them very much. And they would like to, regime change has been on the agenda from, February 1979, from day one. That's why we had an 8-year war that was imposed on the Islamic Republic of Iran by Saddam, and then continuous sanctions before that, after, and so on. And IAEA, the documents which have just been sort of acquired by the security services in Iran are really going to be a bombshell for the world, because IAEA has been working very closely with the Zionist entity to put pressure on Iran to not have develop its nuclear energy and use of nuclear power for civilian purposes. Because again, the leader of the Islamic Republic of Iran has quite clearly said that we are against nuclear weapons. And if Iran wants to develop nuclear weapon, it can. Within a very short space of time, because they have the technology, they have the science, they have the knowledge to do so, but they have resisted that temptation because atomic weapons are against humanity. But of course, I'm not a religious scholar to comment any further on this. Whether the rulings can change or not, that's a different matter for others to sort of contemplate on that. But the crux of the matter is Iran has given a template to the world of nations how to be independent, irrespective of how much pressure is wielded on them, whether it's economic pressure, whether it's cultural pressure, whether it's psychological pressure. But Iran has survived, and I am sure it will continue to survive, and it will be a beacon of hope for the oppressed people of the world, as it has been over the last nearly 50 years, and will continue to do so in the future.
Thank you, Shabir Bhai, for sharing such a beautiful analysis regarding Iranian Supreme Leader as well as Imam Khomeini Rahmatullah Alayh. Farah, what are your thoughts on the veto power US has used? And secondly, one more important thing which is emerging from past many months maybe, or something like that, the Ghana new African president, if you have any idea like whatever is going on, because they have they said Trump not to meddle up with us, so they were trying to gain independence from all sort of you can say Western Western powers inside their country, and they are trying to be sovereign and they are trying to emerge themselves. So how do you see that? Do you see any connection of Palestine? Obviously their freedom fight, how it is awakening globally. Do you see any connection of that with this kind of awakening in Ghana from the president of Ghana, Ibrahim Aradi, I think so. That's how we can pronounce his name. So if you can shed some light on that, if you have any idea.
Well, I suppose the first thing I would say is that the fight for Palestinian liberation, self-determination, and to secure their homeland is a national war of liberation. It's a national struggle against a foreign usurper, a foreign colonial power. Uh, Israel is the white supremacist footprint that is now in the Levant and within West Asia. I actually see the fight for Palestine at the forefront of the fight for liberation of the world. These people are showing through their determination, through their samud, through their steadfastness, through their refusal to surrender to this colonial, racist, fascist regime, that they are a candle in the darkness. And I'm not saying that glibly. The world has become a much darker place in the last decade. When you have people like Madeleine Albright saying that the death of 600,000 children in Iraq before Iraq even suffered the shock and awe of the NATO American British illegal war. She said that she thought that those deaths were a price worth paying. I'm not sure the parents of those 600 children would agree, or their grandparents, or their brothers and sisters, or their cousins, or their community, but this is how Western racism, because this is white supremacism, this is how it acts against people of colour. When they brought Christianity and civilization to the world, they brought slavery, they brought death and misery and indentured slavery and occupation and everything that goes along with it. So the Palestinian fight. Now, I personally view the Zionist state more and more as a Jewish supremacist state. I see the fascism of the Germans of the Second World War being replicated in the fascism of Zionist society today. So you have a genocidal government led by a genocidal maniac in Netanyahu, but you have 82% of the Israeli society fully complicit in wanting to turn Gaza into a car park. They are constantly saying, nuke them, bomb them all. How many times have we heard in social media from leaders in both civil and governmental structures in the Zionist state say that you must murder the children because the children will grow up to be fighters? The only way to get rid of your Palestinian problem is to get rid of the Palestinians. And when people like Lindsey Graham, and there was another senator who recently said that Gaza should be nuked because that's what the Americans did. They end the Japanese resistance during the Second World War. So this is a congressman, I think it was somebody Rand, and he said that they should bomb Gaza with nuclear weapons in order to end the resistance of the Palestinian people. So the Palestinians are fighting fascism. It's modern day fascism, just like the 27 million members of the Soviet Union who died to defeat the Nazis in Germany, the fascists in Germany in the Second World War. They were never defeated. They went underground. Some of them became leaders of NATO. Some of their scientists went on to create NASA. You had Operation Gladio, which was a secret NATO operation to leave fascist groups as like sleeper cells within the Soviet Union, and that they could be organized and brought to the forefront anytime they wanted to destabilize countries. And you've seen that in Ukraine in 2014, the fascist coup in Ukraine, which deposed the democratically elected leader of the Ukrainian people, leading to the secession of the Donbass, leading to the special military operation to go in February 2022 to prevent a massacre by the Azov battalions, the neo-Nazis in Ukraine, the followers of Bandera, the Banderites, and their ilk. So Palestine, the Palestinians are involved in a national war of liberation. They are at the forefront of fighting modern-day fascism, in the ranks of the IDF, Israeli society, and the Israeli government. And yes, they are an example to the world. And in Burkina Faso, and in Chad, and in Niger, and in Mali, and in Ghana, and maybe other countries within the Sahel and within the African continent, those people were colonized by the French and the British, and even though they militarily left and the people were given some form of democratic sovereignty within their own nations, what they have done is they have continued to financially colonize the economies of these previously colonized, occupied, subjugated lands. They will tell you in these countries that ISIS, which is active against many of those governments, that when the French went in supposedly to fight the terrorism increased. The French go in and say, we will guard the mines, the gold mines, the cobalt, the uranium, whatever it happens to be, oil, gas, to protect the interests of French and European companies that are extracting the wealth from those countries for the benefit of those companies. So what you're seeing is a new, almost non-aligned movement of previously colonized but still neo-colonized nations in Africa saying enough of the rape of our resources, enough of leaving our people in poverty, enough of financing ISIS, enough of arming ISIS, enough of training Al-Qaeda and these terrorist groups whose only mission in Africa, on the continent of Africa, is to destabilize the governments that are in place in order to allow the continued rape of the natural resources of those countries for the benefits of the former colonial occupiers.
Thank you, Farah, for sharing your such an eloquent viewpoint on the situation and the kind of fight people of Palestine are. Liberation fight Palestinians are fighting for whole world. I would say that everything they are doing is trying to open up the minds and hearts of the people around the globe and trying to show the real face of these political elites who are governing on the people and ruining their life, and not only their life but the nations even which are about to come, not only the present one. So Shabir bhai, how would you like to conclude the whole discussion, especially from how do you see what's going on in other part of the region in like Lebanon, because there are ongoing fights as well, and after Sayyid Hassan, how is the situation with the within Hezbollah and other fighter groups over there? So how they are dealing with Israel over there? So what's going on between them? Because Syria is supposedly conquered by, for example, Israel. So how do you see the whole situation now? What is the current status of Gaza as well? Because they are trying to take that strip as well, and as they are thinking or saying, at least in statements, that they have conquered or whatsoever the Gaza. So how do you see the whole situation conclusively, if you would like to share your viewpoint?
Thank you. Well, the situation in Syria is, of course, quite precarious. And those of us who've been arguing for the last decade or so that the removal of Assad from Damascus will unleash an ISIS government there, and which has become very clear, because even if you put lipstick on a pig, still is a pig. Therefore, someone who wears a suit and a tie doesn't change at all. So from that angle, if you like, and not only myself, but Rubio, the foreign secretary, the secretary of state of USA, only a few days ago said that there is imminent civil war in Syria. And Rahbar, soon after the fall of Damascus, said that the people of Syria will stand up and fight. So it's the jury's out on Syria at this moment, that whether the current regime in Damascus, which wants to ally itself with Washington and Tel Aviv, is going to survive for too long. We'll just have to, as I said, the jury is out. Obviously, it had an impact on the axis of resistance in Lebanon, with, of course, with the martyrdom of Sayyid Nasrullah and other important players in the axis of resistance in Lebanon. But I think what one has got to realize is that the axis of resistance is resilient. It will come out with new people, because what we've got to remember is when Sayyid Nasrullah was appointed as General Secretary of the movement, he was only 32 years old after the martyrdom of Sayyid Musavi, who was the previous leader, who was assassinated in his car going from Beirut to Tyre on the coast road in Lebanon, and everyone thought that that would be the end of the resistance in Lebanon, but it came out with an individual in the name of Sayyid Nasrullah. And the same thing also with Imam Khomeini. When Imam Khomeini passed away, the media in the West was so excited that this government is not going to last, they will not be able to find another individual like Imam Khomeini, but the God Almighty gifted us with Agha Khamenei as the new leader, who has sort of steered the Islamic revolution in a manner that no one thought was feasible with all the challenges that it has. So yes, we have probably lost a battle, but we haven't lost the war as yet, because in a war there are many battles and there are ups and downs, but at the end of the day, who will come victorious? And it's becoming very clear that the way the Zionist entity is operating is that it knows that its leadership, its elite, knows very well that its days are numbered, because they're acting irrationally. As Fran quite rightly pointed out, it's not just Netanyahu and Smotrich and Ben-Gvir and all these lunatics. It's 82% of the population. Just imagine if 82% of the Muslims said that they supported ISIS, there will be colossal sort of international hoo-ha about it, that, see, we told you, these Muslims, they all support ISIS. But when 82% of the Zionist entities population is supporting the genocide taking place in Gaza, there's nothing on our sort of mainstream media questioning that what kind of ideology is bringing this kind of mindset in the Zionist entity, what ideology they're being taught, what is Netanyahu talks about de-radicalization. I think there has to be re-radicalization of the whole Zionist entity, because they've been radicalized in such a way that they do not view the Palestinians, the people in Gaza, and generally the most of the West Asian Arabs as human beings, because they have described them as cockroaches. And in the beginning, Netanyahu said that it's Amalek. I don't want to go into the whole story of it, but really it was a biblical statement that everything that represents Amalek should be destroyed, and that's what they're working at. Lebanon is a complex situation. Again, it's perhaps, with Fran, I would love to do a program just on Lebanon, because it's a fascinating place, and the way the constitution has been set up and the political structure is, it makes it quite intriguing and quite difficult to operate. But at the end of the day, I think what is fascinating about Lebanon is that the Christians, the other groups in Lebanon, they do support the axis of resistance, and they know it is Hezbollah that liberated the South Lebanon in 2000 from the Zionist entity's occupation, and whatever challenges that are being faced by the Lebanese at this moment, and we had recent elections, local elections, where Hezbollah sort of candidates won overwhelmingly. So at the ground, there is sort of support for the axis of resistance, because they know that the current president and prime minister of Lebanon and many of the other ministers are really in the pockets of USA, France, the former sort of mandated nation which was supposed to be looking after Levant, like Syria and Lebanon. There are challenges, but I think those challenges, with hope in the Almighty, will make them successful. And at the same time, I think they are continuously doing the work to support the people in Gaza.
Inshallah. Thank you so much, Abir Bhai. Thank you so much, Farah, for being with us tonight and sharing your analysis. Really grateful for your time, effort, and participation. And it was really pleasure listening and watching you both. And to the viewers, I would say Palestinian liberation requires our part as well. They are, when the will of Palestinian people, no one is able to break that. No hunger, no disease. I mean, everything they have lost, but still they are fighting against these tyrant oppressive powers. So we need to do our part as well, and we need to stand by Palestinian people, and we should work towards the end of occupation entity. Inshallah, I'll see you next week. Look after yourself, and don't forget the people of Gaza, and keep